Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Esau McCaulley podcast. I'm your host, Esau McCaulley. Today, we're joined on the podcast by somebody I wanted to have on the podcast for a long time, Sharon Hodde Miller. Did I say it right? Hodde?
Oh, you got it.
Okay.
That's it.
Co-pastor of Bright City Church in Durham, North Carolina, podcaster and author, public figure, all of these great things. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
I am so pumped to be with you.
And we have Mike.
Wow, that's the intro I get? Esau. Wait. You just called me yesterday that I'm world famous.
Yeah, I was doing a podcast, an interview in doing a Zoom thing in England, and the person introduced me as Esau McCaulley, blah, 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 blah. And he says, he sits at the feet of Mike and learns on the Esau McCaulley podcast. I'm like, this is now it started as a joke, and now it's getting out of control. But anyways, we'll say producer Mike. And today we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. In particular, we're going to get to the thing that me and Sharon have both seen, which is the movie Lilo and Stitch. And I need to confess something before we go forward. Mm-hmm. I still haven't seen Sinners.
Oh,
and I'm like 3 or 4 movies past that. But we have seen Lilo and Stitch. I'm going to talk about that. But we thought in honor of the fact that we're going to talk about that movie, which made like $800 million, we would have a Disney movie draft.
Yes.
And so we're going to go around. We're going to pick our best Disney movies, our favorite Disney movies.
So couple ground rules.
We
said animated Disney films.
Yes.
Pixar does count.
Yes.
And none of this, it's not Star Wars.
Yeah,
it's not
Marvel.
It's
it has to be like a Disney movie. Okay.
Yes.
So who gets the first pick?
I think our guest should go first.
It doesn't matter because my list is going to be my list and I'm going to win anyway.
Well, then do you want to go last?
No, it doesn't matter. I'll go. No, we'll let Sharon go. Then me.
Why
then
do I
you,
have to be last?
Because you're the producer. Okay, Sharon, you get the first pick. And as long as you don't pick mine, you're in a good place.
Okay. So first of all, I need y'all to understand how excited I have been about this because when you texted me and said, what should we talk about? And I said, first of all, the thing you need to understand is the thing I'm most knowledgeable about in culture is Disney. Okay. I'm like a self-professed, self-described Disney adult.
Okay.
And so when you texted me this morning that we're going to do a Disney draft, I was literally laying in the dentist. I was in the dentist chair.
Okay.
With my phone like above taking notes because I was like, I gotta be ready. I gotta be ready for this. So
I'm going to be honest because I asked Gemini or ChatGPT for the best Disney movies.
Wow.
But no, my number one was not the ones that was listed. So ChatGPT knows nothing about Disney. But okay, give us your first pick.
Okay, so my first pick is Beauty and the Beast.
Classic. Oh. Okay.
And do I need to explain why?
Oh yeah, you can explain why. And if you know a version, then if there's one in which you remember, I don't remember. I just kind of said whichever one because they always remake them. But is there a particular Beauty and the Beast that you like?
So the one that came out in the 90s, I believe it was in the early 90s.
Yeah, the original.
And the reason why is there's a couple reasons. One is this was part of the Disney Renaissance. Do you know what this is? The Disney Renaissance. So when the animated movies sort of came back, there was sort of a year of slump. Yeah. And they came back. The one that kicked off the Disney Renaissance was actually The Little Mermaid, but I don't love The Little Mermaid for a lot of different reasons. But I love Beauty and the Beast. I love all the songs in Beauty and the Beast. I could watch it over and over again. And so that is my number one.
So
pick.
I'm going to say that Beauty and the Beast, I have like 15 on here. Beauty and Beast is not on here. So let me ask you this. Can you turn in 30 seconds something from Beauty and the Beast into a sermon illustration since you're a pastor? Bring me some Jesus and the Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, man. I mean, I think the fact that her loving him, caring for him, having a relationship with him brought out the truest him,
there we go.
He basically he lived this life of narcissism and self-indulgence, and it stripped him of his own humanity. And so he became this beast type creature.
Oh my goodness.
But in having self-giving relationship with another person, it rehumanized him and dignified him and redeemed him. How's that?
Wow. Esau, I was thinking about going to your church. I think I'm going to go to Sharon's church.
I would recommend you go to Bright City instead of All Saints. Okay, well, you know what? In the spirit of gentleness, because I know you're not going to have mine. What's your number one pick?
All right, number one, Ratatouille.
Oh,
It's so good. It's cute.
Oh.
It's on your.
That was on my list, but it was third.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
do you have anything besides it's just good?
It is. I didn't prepare this part. I just concentrated on. I'm gonna pick the best movies, but no, Ratatouille.
So wait, everybody says let Mike cook, but here prepare the meal, Mike.
Okay, Ratatouille, best Disney movie of all time because one, it's a beautiful movie. It's just fun to watch.
Okay.
It is the story of two underdogs.
Okay.
Rising to the top, surpassing expectations, working together.
Yeah.
It's fun. Great message. Great movie.
Okay. Neither one of you had my number one pick. Number one pick, out of the box, Lady and the Tramp.
Ooh.
Oh, what do you? Ooh.
Okay.
First of all, wrong side of the street, right side of the street. Different worlds coming together. What do you mean? You know what I mean? That's like me. I don't know who's lady and who's the tramp there, but but I don't know. I think that there are very few films, iconic films that have a scene that everybody immediately recognizes than the little spaghetti scene.
Sure.
So I know we're all married. Have you tried the spaghetti scene at any point?
No.
Did you, Sharon? Did it cross your mind when you saw spaghetti? Like
I'm
maybe
trying to think if we've.
Everybody does.
Have you actually done it?
No, but I don't think so.
Everyone thinks about it.
Everybody thinks about it.
Sharon, have you?
I'm trying to think.
But it at least crossed your mind. It crossed your mind. It's crossed everybody's mind.
Out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who gets to go next?
You get to go again.
Okay, then I'm going to hit with another easy dub. 101 Dalmatians.
Okay.
Why?
Man, you're going with like the throwbacks.
Yeah,
you're like the classic.
I feel like I could have said I don't know. Is Cars like even count?
Oh,
because I think it's owned by Pixar, but I feel like it has to feel like a Disney movie. I feel like Disney got so big it could buy Pixar and then it could kind of steal. But like there's a vibe to the OG Disney movie. So 101 Dalmatians, because who doesn't love a bunch of dogs, who didn't want a Dalmatian at some point when they were a kid, and then you found out they didn't live as long and they're super expensive. But 101 Dalmatians, a good bad character, who is both bad and interesting. Great show. Okay, that's my second one.
All right, I'm up next. I'm gonna go with like Beauty and the Beast. It's fine, Sharon, but a little problematic at times.
Oh,
so I wanted to pick a princess movie, but one about women empowerment. And so what better than Mulan?
Ooh.
Great.
Okay.
Number 2 pick here. I mean, I've already won this, I feel like.
I'm pretty sure that I'm going to get it with the next one.
It's got great music. It has a great story. It's a home run.
Who do you have? Whose turn is it?
Sharon's
your turn.
Okay, I'm honestly stunned that no one has picked this, but my number 2 is The Lion King.
Yeah. It was on my list.
I need to make a confession to America.
What? Esau.
Do not like The Lion King. Don't like it. Don't like it.
Why?
Because they randomly kill the dad, right? Don't they kill the dad?
Yeah.
They kill the dad, and then there's Scar. Scar's a jerk. I mean, it's traumatizing.
To be fair, you're describing half of Disney movies. The parent dies.
Yeah. Why don't you just say it's Bambi? I don't know. I just never liked it.
Sharon, tell him why he's wrong.
Oh my goodness. This soundtrack is iconic. And once again, there's not really a weak song in that entire soundtrack. I mean, it's so good. I could just listen to that. But it's also really funny. It's like a very funny, I think between that and Aladdin, they're like pretty closely tied just in terms of
also not on my
belly
list.
Laugh jokes. Oh my goodness.
I feel like Sharon's regretting coming on the podcast. Is it my turn?
No, I love how bad you are at these drafts.
That's why you have to be in charge.
How many rounds are we doing?
We'll do 3. Well, this is your last one.
This is my last one?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Okay. I got to go with Toy Story. I know it's another Pixar movie.
That was on my list.
Aladdin was very close. I almost went with that. I almost went with Emperor's New Groove, like a kind of a dark horse, but
also not on my list.
Yeah, but I remember Toy Story came out when I was 6 or 7. I remember the trailer for the movie, watching it in the movie theaters. It opened with Buzz Lightyear going down the Hot Wheels track, and I was just like, "What is this? It's incredible." It's a home run.
Here's my freezing. Oh, this might be a hot take.
Okay.
Toy Story.
Yeah.
Better than Lion King.
Oh, yeah, easily.
Okay, I feel good.
Sharon?
Oh.
That's a hot take. That's a hot take.
Yeah. So
okay, so now it's Esau, you're back.
Okay, so I'm going to go because whenever we do these lists, I have to have one black person that's a central character. Princess and the Frog.
Oh, yeah. That was my number 3.
There we go. Oh, look at that. Hold this L. You lose this round. So Princess and the Frog. I mean, one more needs to be said.
Yeah.
Okay.
I somehow did mess up this order. You switched it on me at last minute. So
I apologize.
Sharon, I've got 3. Esau.
Wait, it was supposed to be her turn?
I'm confused how this happened. Apparently, I'm also bad at drafting. Sharon, go ahead. Do you have a third?
So you can have Princess and the Frog because I got a backup that's even better. If you need it,
okay.
you can
I'll
have
take
it.
Princess and the Frog then because I love Princess and the Frog.
Okay.
I think that is another one. A through line for me is the music.
Okay.
Like the soundtrack. If the soundtrack is really good, that's a big one for me. And I love the soundtrack to Princess and the Frog.
Okay. I'm going to cheat a little bit because it's my podcast.
Yeah.
I'm going to use a TV show.
No,
The Proud Family.
No, it doesn't count.
Oh, what do you mean? It's a Disney and it's a cartoon. Okay, then I won't do that. I will do another one.
We said best Disney movies.
Okay. What about Doc McStuffins? I think there has to be a movie version of that somewhere. Okay.
I mean, you can have it.
Okay.
I think we should get Emerson down here to judge this.
Okay, you're right. Neither one of those are movies. I'm sure there's a Doc McStuffins movie somewhere. But I'll use the other one on my list, Zootopia.
Okay.
Is that good?
It's good in the sense that I don't think you're going to win this draft.
I think that you should. I think I'm going to call a veto and say I want either Doc McStuffins or Proud Family as my third one.
Fine, you can.
Okay, because I got the merchandise. You know what I mean? I got the merchandise. I got like a TV show, and I'm sure there's a straight to VHS Doc McStuffins movie somewhere. So I think I'll take that.
Okay. Real quick, we're going to get Emerson down here. Let me recap to the audience where the draft is at. So Sharon ended up with Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, and Princess and the Frog. Some great classics in there.
But I had Princess and the Frog originally, but go ahead.
I ended up with Ratatouille, Mulan, and Toy Story. Heavy emphasis on Pixar. Okay. And then Esau's list, Lady and the Tramp, 101 Dalmatians.
There we go.
And definitely not a Disney movie, The Proud Family.
There we go. It's Disney related.
So Emerson is our community engagement director. You maybe remember her from the mailbag episode we did a little bit ago. Emerson.
And by the way, for the people who've seen it, I mean the original Proud Family, like the first couple of seasons. Okay.
All right, Emerson's here. You're not gonna be able to hear her very well. Just yell loudly. Who won the draft?
Oh, I've got to give it to Mike.
Oh, whoa. Oh my goodness! She's like, what is she, like a millennial? What is she? A Gen X?
Well, there's also there's a Pixar Disney animation divide. And if you're like a Pixar person and that's your bias, then it just doesn't matter. Yeah. Like that's what you're going to vote for.
Yeah, that's wrong. And that's also, I don't really feel like, I didn't want to say this until you won and I'm going to invalidate it. I didn't want Pixar in the thing. I feel like there's Disney.
We texted about this. We set the ground rules, unlike TV shows.
I wanted it to be like OG Disney. But anyways, the reason we thought we started the draft is because I actually saw the movie. Because I have kids, right? So now I have 4 kids. 3 of them came with me to go and see the TV show, the movie Lilo and Stitch. The live action one wasn't even actually a cartoon. And I really, really liked the film.
Wow.
And when I texted Sharon about it, she said that she liked it too. So we'll let her start. What did you like? What did you like about the film? Can you give people who haven't seen it a little bit of a context of what the movie is about?
So first of all, I was explaining the plot of Lilo and Stitch to someone who had never seen it, and I didn't realize what a bananas premise this movie is. Because it's about this little girl who her parents have died, and so her older sister is taking care of her, and her interior world is really stormy because, obviously she's been through a lot of trauma and grief. And so her sister is having trouble taking care of her. And also there's this alien.
Well, you left out the part that because her sister is working kind of a working class job, that they're kind of poor. And because they're poor, people make fun of them. So she doesn't have a lot of friends. And so she's praying for a friend. And who shows up, Sharon?
Stitch shows up from outer space.
Okay.
And so, it's like a crazy premise to begin with.
But it works.
So, I mean, I don't think any of these live action movies have been very good so far, or at least the general consensus is they're not great. Don't bother. But you two are saying this one is as good, if not better, than the original. So, Sharon, what do you think?
One thing that I have discovered is that opinions about this break along generational lines. So we've got a ton of like Gen Z people on staff at our church, and they grew up with this movie. Like they were little kids when it came out. And so they have not liked the live action. They're like very loyal to the original. I personally did not like the original. Okay. And the reason I didn't like the original is that I did not find Lilo to be especially likable. And I did not find Stitch to be especially likable. And so basically, I did not like Lilo or Stitch. And so that was a problem for me. It's just because it's trying to communicate, obviously this little girl has a lot of complicated emotions, very understandable. But I didn't find myself kind of drawn to her necessarily, and I found Stitch to just be too chaotic.
Yeah.
So what was different? So how did they make it more likable then?
Well, can I make a confession?
Yeah.
Didn't see the original version.
Okay.
Walked into this cold, no idea where the plot was going. just walked into a movie. Okay. So what did you find interesting about the movie? Because I got a take that I'm holding in. I'm going to let Sharon cook first. Then I'm going to bring out my fire take.
So the reason I found the characters a little bit more likable, Stitch, because he's computer generated, he looks like this little blue furry guy, and he's really cute, actually. And so I didn't necessarily find him cute in the first movie, but he's very cute in this one. And then the little girl that plays Lilo is also just an outstanding, I mean, she's so tiny. And so to be acting at that age, but she, I think you understand more why she is struggling, like in the way that I just found myself more drawn to her. Yeah. But the reason why I liked this movie, I thought that they did a really good job. In the original, that the older sister is having trouble managing her younger sister, but it wasn't clear to me about like the age difference. Yeah. And so it felt much more like the problem was Lilo. But in the remake, it seemed much more clear to me, no, her sister is not an adult. Yeah. Her sister is like 19, 20 years old and should not be taking care of a 7-year-old. Yeah. And it's not that Lilo is just too much. It's also that her older sister is too young. Yeah. And so I thought that was much more believable. And then the other thing that you wouldn't know this, Esau, because you didn't see the original, but in the original, the older sister kind of gives up her dreams in order to stay because of this whole notion of Ohana, like family, no one gets left behind. And when I talked to other people who grew up on this movie, they didn't like how in this remake, she goes off to get her marine biology degree. And they were like, this betrays the whole premise. And I said, no, it does not. Because what was best for Lilo was not to be raised by another child. Yeah. That was not actually what was best for Lilo. And that was not actually what was best for her older sister. And so in the end, I thought the live action, even though it wasn't this like, feel good, like they all stayed together, I thought it was like, actually, this is what really needed to happen for both of them to be taken care of. So that was my takeaway. Oh,
there we go. Let me tell you what. So I didn't know any of that. Thank you. I should do some research, right? But the thing that I thought about, that I liked about this show or this movie is that it did a good job of showing rather than telling. And it was a very, to me, interesting social commentary. What Sharon talked about is that there was a teen, like 20-year-old, who's raising a 7 or 8-year-old. And so she has a job, a working class job. And so because she has a working class job, she struggles with childcare. The amount of single moms who I know who struggle with childcare and who are managing having to figure out how do I do my job well, and what do I do if there's anything after school with the kid. She struggles to get to an after school event because she's working. If a kid gets sick, there's a problem. She doesn't have health care because the health care is, once again, is not related to her job. And so the film shows, to me, a single mom. She becomes a mom, obviously, through a tragedy, who's struggling to balance. In the film, she's going to lose, spoiler alert, she's going to lose custody of Lilo unless she can find health insurance by this certain deadline. And the best way to get health insurance is through your job. So she's looking for work so she can solve this problem. And once again, this idea that you're watching a young single mother struggle with how to find a job. But once again, when she's having to go to an interview, she's trying to find a place to put Lilo, which you see, once again, oftentimes on the news, that even the ability to go to a job interview is complicated by childcare. And the thing that was really interesting to me, because I'm sitting there with my children, and my children are cheering them. So most of the movie is looking for a job. Dealing, obviously behind the scenes, the dog, Stitch is causing chaos. But my kids are empathizing with the sister as she looks for work. And they're hoping that she gets this job. But I've never seen my kids emotionally invested in a job interview. And I just thought that was a really good way of saying, here's a film that is actually, a social commentary that shows rather than tells. Obviously, in the background, there's a dog, an alien who's running around doing stuff. So it's entertaining. It's not preachy, but it is showing to me the struggles of single motherhood, healthcare, and childcare. And as someone who was raised by a single mom, I found myself moved. So I felt feelings watching Lilo's sister try to go and find work. So did you notice that aspect of the film, or am I too all in my feelings?
I think that's exactly. I think it's just a more realistic depiction of life, than the animated cartoon, and even with in the end, with the live action. This is a spoiler, I guess. So if you don't want to hear the spoiler, turn off for 30 seconds. But in the end, there's this kind of grandmother figure who is their neighbor and family, and she kind of steps in, and so their community, comes around them. And so I think that's so much more beautiful and a better call to action than just saying give up your dreams. And then they just lived, give up your dreams and live happily ever after.
The other thing that I thought was interesting, and forgive me for belaboring this, is you also saw this idea, this girl was talented, and she had a chance to go to college, and her college career actually was probably the only way to get out of this kind of economic turnstile that she was on. And so the only way for her for them to ever go beyond hand-to-mouth poverty was actually for her to give up the child for a season. And so in the movie, obviously, you have the God in the machine who steps in at the moment, like she said, the neighbor who comes in, so she doesn't actually lose contact. She's right next door. And so there is this sense in which everything works out in the end, where Lilo isn't abandoned. Her and her sister have a positive relationship, even though she's at college. And so obviously, I knew a lot of single moms who didn't actually have someone who stepped in, who did that. And I also knew single mothers who had to allow their parents to raise their kids for a season so they can go off. And so to me, I just thought it was good to have a film that wasn't overly preachy, that revealed the real struggles of actual human beings, except for the fact that there was an alien involved. So let me ask you this. Do you think it's important? Do you think that these kinds of ideas actually stick with do you have kids?
Yes.
Okay. How old are they?
My oldest is almost 13. My middle is 10, and my youngest is 7.
So do you try to hope that they have, do you think that these kind of messages stick with kids? Do these kinds of things, are they formative on the imagination?
I think my kids are too young for me to be able to answer that.
Yeah.
But we definitely talk about it.
Yeah.
And I ask them questions about it. But, I will deliver my greatest content to them. And then they will ask me if they can buy some new Pokemon cards. And so it's,
Yeah, I do think we spend a lot of time as parents, at least I do, trying to pay attention to what my kids watch. Oftentimes, I just give up and I just let them stream Bunked or whatever, just like over. If you don't, your kids aren't old enough, but trust me, when you get to that age, you'll know. But I do try to say, is there anything in this film that is redeemable that might shake my kids' imagination? Hi, it's Esau. If you're looking for another fascinating podcast that touches on religion and spirituality, I have the perfect recommendation for you. The Signal award-winning show, No Small Endeavor. As a friend and recent guest of the podcast, I can truly say it's worth a listen. Produced by Great Feeling Studios and PRX, No Small Endeavor explores what it means to live a good life. Each episode, host Lee C. Kemp sits down with special guests like pastor and theologian Tish Harrison Warren, civil rights hero Reverend James Lawson, and one of the world's most influential living theologians, Stanley Hauerwas, to discuss how their faith shaped their journey. If you're looking for a place to start, check out their recent episode with Americana songwriter Drew Holcomb, in which he unpacks how creativity is a way to overcome fear, make something that didn't exist before. It's a beautiful heart-to-heart. Don't miss out. Follow No Small Endeavor on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast.
Zones field got him doing football numbers, only average grown. He was acting grown.
So, do you have any other things to say about our beloved Lilo and Stitch before we give Mike his chance in Mike's Corner to ask us a question? Do you have anything else that you wanted to get off your chest about this film before we move on?
I don't think so. I mean, I really love your take on it. Like, I hadn't even thought of that level, and that's really beautiful. And when I argue with all my Gen Z staff, I'm going to use that now. So.
It is. Now, interesting, I pitched this article. They didn't run it. I had a couple of publishers, because I said, would Lilo and Stitch have lost Medicaid? Because some of the working poor who are depicted in that film are the very people who might be affected by bills running through Congress. But they just said maybe people aren't as concerned about the healthcare of aliens as I thought. So that article will never see the light of day. That's the reason why this is on the podcast. I thought that was a good idea, publishing world. Okay, but Mike.
Okay.
Mike's Corner, what do you have for us?
All right. Well, you both are pastors.
Yes.
And you both are church planters, even.
Yes.
So, and you both have big online platforms and you're writers. And how do you manage both being a pastor and kind of how you act on a Sunday morning or when you're meeting with people in your church to how you are when you're online or as a writer? Like, how are you managing your two big public spaces?
Sharon?
Mm-hmm. So I'm so curious, Esau, to hear how you answer this question, because both of us had a public presence before planting a church. Have you pastored before?
I pastored like in 2012 in Japan. Okay. So it's been about a decade. When did you plant Bright City?
2018.
Okay.
So I've had a public presence, like a social media presence for longer than that.
Yeah.
And so it has definitely been a transition, because before I was pastoring a church, I did feel a lot more freedom to say kind of whatever I wanted to.
Yeah.
And I was much more engaging with people who were on social media.
Yeah.
But when I became a pastor, starting to realize, everything that I say online, my church can read it.
Yes.
And also, the things that are happening on social media are not the same things that the people in my church are necessarily, that's like front of mind for them. And so it's definitely caused me to post with more care, I would say. Like I am less prone to just post something just because it popped into my brain. Yeah. But I'm more kind of thinking through, okay, is this actually, how is this going to land with my people?
Yeah. Like,
how are they going to hear this? But then also the people in my church are shaping more like what I am thinking about, because you have like what's on social media, but that doesn't necessarily represent everyone in the church.
Yeah.
And so the people in my church are also shaping the things that I'm soaking in and thinking about. And so that is the shift that has taken place for me.
Have you ever had someone in your church come to you upset about something you said online? Like not something you said on a Sunday morning, but online?
You know, it's interesting. Yes, but the irony is I posted something once that someone in our church thought was a implied, subtle criticism of Trump, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
But they thought that it was.
Yeah.
And so they were still upset with me because of that. And so that has definitely added a layer for me of thinking through timing and, how could this be misinterpreted by the people in my church? There's definitely a complexity there now.
Yeah. So it's interesting. One of the reasons why, she's like 5-6 years further down the road. The reason why I planted the church is actually the very experience that she had, because I found that a lot of the work that I did before was traveling around and speaking. And obviously, because of my public writing and those things, I was on social media. And that is a certain kind of ecosystem with a certain set of issues. And those issues didn't feel authentic to me. In other words, I found myself being shaped by people that I didn't know and being like ministering to people that I didn't know. And I felt like I was doing a vague good instead of a particular good. And I had this real desire to say, and one of the things that happens is, and I'm not saying that social media is all negative, but most of the things that we have to offer are things that the church can do better. And so there is this culture of negativity that sometimes surrounds the church. And I was like, I actually like the local church. And my life was changed. Like books were important to me. And my life has been shaped by the books that I've read and the people who encourage my faith. But I am a Christian because of the ministry of lay people and pastors who poured into my life when I was a young adult and a child. And so I felt like I wanted to be able to give that back to the church. When I felt like people were running away from the church, that I wanted to run towards it. And so part of it was like I wanted to be in an authentic community that I was somewhat accountable to. And so I found, so I'm only like 6 months into the church plant, so I'm not a veteran yet. But I would say that I am more aware of the things that I think I've been kind of burned out on social media in general, but it does make me more aware of the things that I say. And it also helps me to have a real understanding of, like Sharon said, the things that touch ground, right? There's certain things that are big controversies that are just blazing on social media that unless you're super online, you don't know about. And so I come to my church on Sunday and nobody knows about them. And so it has helped me reset my kind of spiritual filters. And so for me, it has been, and the other thing I've tried to do as a pastor, and this has been, once again, brief, I tried not to build a church around my social media or public platform. So I tried not to make the All Saints simply an expression of Esau's public ministry in a local context. So I tried to be like, this sounds like silly, an ordinary pastor. So I go to, we had the cookout. We had like the Welcome to All Saints cookout. We had 30 people at my house where I just grilled them like very mediocre hamburgers and hot dogs. And I went through the slideshow telling them about the church. And so I tried to be accessible. If there's something that you need, there's other people on the staff. We have an associate pastor, Heather Matthews. And so she does some of the pastoral care too. And so I've tried to be what you would call an ordinary pastor in the lives of people and not just a celebrity pastor who kind of flies in and flies out. And that's actually been a good thing because it's limited my time to do anything else. I've not traveled at all or very little in 2025 because I had to be in my church on Sunday. And so it's also meant that I just don't do as much stuff.
Yeah. Wow. So you mentioned that sometimes the issues are different in your church than they are online. And so like, I would say, or I just wonder, what are the big issues that your people in your church are kind of dealing with right now? Is it what's going on in LA and the protests and the tension in politics, or is it just like, no, it's the standard stuff, relationship issues and job stuff and things like that? Sharon, do you have an answer?
Yeah, so I'm in Durham, which is actually, even though we're in the Bible Belt, is actually a very progressive area, very progressive. And so my church I think it's fair to say we have some people who are right of center, but I think most people tend to be more left of center. And so one of the things that is really close to the surface right now, we're also a university town. We have Duke, we have UNC, we have NC State. And so there's a lot of people whose jobs, their research, their funding is all sort of being thrown into the air right now. They don't know what the future means. They don't know if the people that work for them are going to have to be let go. There just is a lot of uncertainty in the workplace. And then there's also, just because we are in a more progressive area, there is a lot of fear around what the future looks like.
Yeah.
And so for me, and for my husband, Ike, the question is, how do we pastor that faithfully? And that means less, talking about kind of issues around the good of caring for immigrants, for example. That isn't a hard sell at a church like ours.
Yeah.
Ours is more about, how do you cultivate resiliency and hope at a time when you are tempted to despair or feel cynical. And right before the election, we actually looked at the 7 letters in Revelation, and that was so helpful, because you have these letters where Jesus is, on the one hand, naming the reality of their hardship, but he is also saying, and this is why your integrity matters so greatly right now. And so we've returned to that a lot. And so I've seen that as primarily, how do I cultivate this resilient hope, this endurance? How do we continue to hold tightly to our integrity in Christ? And so that's one thing that is really particular to our church. And then the other is less particular to our church, which is people are still, their marriages are broken, or they're lacking meaning in their life, and they feel lost. And one of the most exciting things we're doing right now is offering an alpha course, where we're creating a space for people who don't know anything about the Bible and don't have any baggage around the church, but they just want to know, what is the meaning of life? And so those are really the two spaces that occupy my thoughts the most, that aren't really represented on social media.
Yeah. So I think you could misunderstand what me and her were trying to get at. It's not that the political issues that exist in the world don't come into the local church. They do. What I have in mind is like some of the inner Christian debates where there's like that's the stuff that I don't see as much. So I would say that in my context, like you said, if you come to like my church or our church, you kind of probably understand that we aren't afraid of talking about social issues. And so me, like she said, saying something about, immigration or those, that's not a controversial take. What I try to do is make these kinds of issues, I try to raise the theological stakes. In other words, there's these things that we kind of intuitively think through as good or as important as Christians. And what I try to do is to give them the theological and spiritual resources, so that it's not an instinct, but it's a core value. So that we're not just baptizing the political right or the political left. We're saying these things that we may intuitively know are important, why are they important to God? And how do we engage in these things in a way that is faithful? So that's the first thing. The second thing that I've noticed a lot is there's this desire that we want to go to a church that says the things we want them to say. And once the pastor has said the thing, that kind of relieves the tension. But to me, that doesn't do anything, because what matters is after you said the thing is to actually live the thing. And you might be emotionally really invested in these kinds of issues, but I still think that a lot of the people who have trauma inflicted upon them by someone close to them. Mm. It's their friend. It's their friendships that are falling apart. It's their relationships, the relationship with their kids. Even when you're an adult, the relationship with your parents sometimes. Like people have complicated relationship with their parents. And so all of these things. And so after you said, may I put it this way, after you said the structural systems and sins exist, we need to deal with the personal sins as well. And so what we're trying to do as a church that we don't want to choose. We want to be able to say, yes, there's a broken world out there that is in need of healing, but so do you. And you have to become the kind of person who actually engage that world. So that's what I would say. I would say that trying to provide balance between just saying the thing and actually giving people the the resources to live as Christians. I just remember, and I talked about this so much on my podcast, I am sometimes the frustration that I had with my life during a certain season of time when I was really online was transferred into online fights, even though there were other issues going on with me spiritually and personally. And so sometimes the energy, I'm not saying that the things that are going on politically aren't important, but sometimes the energy that we put into them is the way of hiding from the actual things that are going on in our lives. And so I've tried to be really, really intentional about saying, we're called all saints, right? Because like the particular holiness of our lives matter as much as the public witness that we make to the world. Did I leave anything out, Sharon?
I could not have said it any better myself.
You also, if I'm allowed to say this, in addition to being a podcaster, what's the name of it? Is it a Resilient Pastor where you're on? Mm-hmm. And yes. you're a pastor. You're a resilient pastor, and you're on the Resilient Pastor, and you pastor. But you're also re-releasing a book. So you're a writer too. Can you tell us a little bit about the book? I know we're towards the end of the podcast, but can you tell us what you got going on as a writer?
Yeah. So my very first book I wrote in 2017, it's called Free of Me, Why Life is Better When It's Not About You. And it was born out of actually, interestingly, a season of ministry. Yeah. Where I had been just writing and speaking and loving it, but reached a point where I noticed I'd kind of reached a level where I started comparing myself to other people who were doing the same thing I was doing.
Oh, so can I ask you a question? Can I pause? Uh-huh. So let's say, for example, you started off as the producer and, some people started to like you and now you want to make yourself the co-host of the podcast. Would you say that person needed to be free of me or free of Mike? Would that be how you would describe that?
That's exactly how I would say it. So.
There you go. Wow. I'm sorry. Continue on with your book. Go ahead. Yes.
So
you were comparing yourself to other people?
Comparing myself. I was needing to compare well, or people that I looked up to, I was wanting them to acknowledge me, all of that. And it took all the joy out of ministry for me. And I became this really fragile, insecure person. And I was really caught off guard by that. I've actually historically not struggled. Insecurity has not been one of the things that I really struggle with. And so I was really analyzing this. I'm the kind of person where if there's something going on inside my interior world, I'm going to research that sucker until I've wrestled it to the ground. And so I started reading all these books about insecurity and reading blogs and listening to podcasts and all this stuff, reading, what does scripture say about me and how great I am, that God loves me and has a purpose for me. And I got to the end of that and realized it had not helped at all.
Didn't work.
That none of the messages about insecurity were touching whatever was going on inside of me. What ended up cracking the code for me was realizing, I read a book by Tim Keller, you've probably heard of it, called The Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness. Yeah. And one of the things that he clarifies is that for some people, the cause of their insecurity is not low self-esteem, but self-preoccupation. And that named for me, that's what was going on, is I had made something about me that was not about me, and it had turned me into this really fragile, insecure person. And so I wrote Free of Me because even though Tim Keller, it's a very, very short book. You can read it in 45 minutes, but it is very big picture. And I needed handles for that. And so Free of Me is me kind of walking out, why is that true? And what do we do about it? Because I want to actually live this out. Kind of like you said, it's not enough to say the thing, you actually have to live it. And so I published that in 2017, and it continues to be my best-selling book. But it also, one of the things that you've probably not experienced this, Esau, but as a woman, in publishing.
I'm not a woman in publishing, so this is going to be news.
I'll share this with you. So women are the primary buyers of books.
Yes, I know that
and
part.
So they want to market to women. And so the cover was very girly, honestly. It has this very scripty font. It's very feminine looking. And because of that, it was marketed as kind of a self-help book for women. Yeah. And even though it has sold well, I just felt like this is out of step with the actual message of the book. And so I'd asked them if they would ever consider re-releasing it with a different cover, and that's coming on July 1st.
Yeah, so let me say, there's so much that I could say about this book. I think that people assume that when someone has something like a successful book or a public ministry, that was initially the goal. I think a lot of us just find ourselves doing work and writing books because of our passion. And it's really hard when some success comes not to lose yourself spiritually. There are a million temptations. One of them is like you talked about, comparison. No matter how well you sell, there's someone who sells better. No matter how many followers you have, there's someone who has more followers. No matter how many people you get to endorse your book, there's someone who has a bigger list of endorsements. And although that was not the reason, right? Once you get into a business relationship with a publisher, they kind of funnel you into this world. And so I know I felt those same kinds of things, and I had a different set of struggles, but I just think it's really hard for people. And then it's not only the fact that you then begin to compete with someone who is like in a what we call above us. We're looking that way, but also people who are trying to get where we are looking at us. And so you end up having people who don't have your platform who are mad at you, or at least jealous of you, but then you're jealous of someone else, and it becomes this really dysfunctional thing. One of the things we talked about pastoring churches, right? One of the things that I wasn't running from this stuff in the sense that I took joy from it. I just said, I can't have my entire life be oriented around the competitive culture of public Christianity. Mm-hmm. And although I felt like I had things to say that hopefully that are useful for the church in the world, I just don't know of a category. I'm a New Testament guy. I just don't know of a biblical category of public Christian who everybody knows who sells stuff. I just don't, teacher, understand, pastor, I can understand, layperson involved in your church, I can understand, but I just didn't understand this world, and I found it spiritually unhealthy. And so one of the ways I've tried to kind of balance it is to kind of say some of those things that marked that season of my life, I just don't want to define me anymore. So I'm trying my best to get free of me, but maybe I need to read your book too. So is there, I would say this to writers, because every writer, because I know we got to be fake humble, right? But I'm going to say you can't be fake humble, because everybody who writes a book has a favorite section where they just said, I'm in my writer bag. So Sharon, where in Free of Me are you saying I'm fully flourishing as a writer? I know the whole book is good, but this portion spoke to me and it still speaks to my readers. What is your favorite part there?
You know, I actually think just the entire first section of the book when I'm sharing. So I start out actually by telling the story of Narcissus. And that was part of the cover redesign is there's a picture of a river. There's river and sky to kind of represent the journey of the book. But in this ancient myth, Narcissus falls in love with his own reflection in the river. And he's so captivated by it that he just lays down by the riverbank and stays there until he dies. Yeah. And I can't think of a better spiritual metaphor for what we do to ourselves when we are focused on ourselves, like what we do to ourselves spiritually, emotionally, all of that. And so I start out there and then kind of share my own story. But I think at the beginning of the book, really getting into how I arrived at that, it's just a light bulb moment, I think, for anyone. And so I would say just start there.
So, Sharon, what would you say then to someone who... You don't even know where I'm going with this.
Okay, go ahead. You're gonna ruin my close, but you say your part, then I'm gonna say how I was actually gonna close the podcast. Go ahead.
Well,
ask her.
What would you say to someone who wears the merchandise of their own podcast with their name on it as a hoodie? Is it someone who might struggle with the idea you were talking about?
You know, it's funny. One of the things I did not anticipate when I go to conferences or whatever, and I'm signing books, is people will come up and ask me to sign their book, and they'll slide it across and they'll say, you know, my mother-in-law really needs this. And did not anticipate the ways that it would be used to sort of like passive aggressively jab somebody.
I think we can both. For our audio listeners, Esau is wearing a gray Esau McCaulley podcast hoodie. So it just, I don't know, it just struck me.
This is what I was going to say two things. I'm not even going to let you drag me down. I was going to say, it is true that if the research is also that I've read, is that women are the biggest sellers, are the biggest purchasers of books, but it is also the case that men are less likely to buy women's books. Mm-hmm. So I want to encourage both the ladies and the fellas who are listening to the podcast to please pick up a copy of Free of Me. And in order to learn from Sharon, I think that me and you should end our competition. That was originally what I was going to say until you took a shot at my. But we can become like Sharon can teach us men the opportunity to forget our own egos and we fight for control of the show, Esau, and just be friends.
Should we share a plate of spaghetti together?
No, no. We won't do that.
Okay.
We won't do that. Thank you for the offer, though.
Okay.
I'm going to affirm that idea. So thank you all for listening to the Esau McCaulley podcast. Sharon, thank you for joining us. The Esau McCaulley podcast is a production of Holy Post Media, produced by Mike Stay Low, Stray Low. If you know, now you know. Edited by Seth Gorvette, like a Corvette. Music by Rob Knorr. Make sure to follow the show wherever you get your podcast and leave a review so more people can find it. See you next time. I'm out.